Hey everyone, it is Dr. Nicole Carter with Hughes Women's Health Advocacy Institute, and we have,
My name is Lauren Polk. I'm the health equity intern here at Hughes.
and we are here with our second discussion of the Sugar Jar by Yasmin Cheyenne, and we just want to, before we get started, we'll review some things from the last time that we were together, but we'll also be highlighting the fact that we have, and I'm super happy about this, but that we have a whole discussion guide. We mentioned it the last time, but we have a whole discussion guide. You see it at the bottom. So make sure we will put the link in the chat and on the different sites that we're streaming to. But make sure to go to hughesinstitute.org, click on the link to the event, so the flyer for the event, and you'll see the guide. It is actually for purchase, but it is pay what you can. So anywhere between free for those who need a little help to $10 to those who are willing to support a good cause. So we have that discussion guide that actually Lauren put together for us, and I did a little editing in there, but it's a pretty dope guide, and that's what we'll be using for our discussion today. So I'm gonna drop the link to that um, really quickly so that everyone can get it. Link. And thank you for all those who have joined. We see some on Instagram. There are some people who joined us. I put the link there for you all in the comments for those who are interested in picking up that link. And just know that it's no worries if like cost is a factor. We do have the option to download that discussion guide for free. And then for those who are willing and can support us, it is also there for purchase. So we're going to get started. And again, we are using the discussion guide to go through today's part two of our discussion. And then we got a great announcement at the end about our next discussion that's going to be for Minority Mental Health Month in July. And so we'll talk about that a little bit later. So again, this is a series and a project that Hughes Women's Health Advocacy Institute is calling the Well Read Project, and we will continue with these opportunities to engage in discussion. So make sure that you are putting your comments this time. I think Lauren is making sure to look at the Instagram, and I'm looking at YouTube and Facebook to make sure that we address any comments that come up. We ask any questions, so feel free to ask additional questions as we go through. Again, the Well Read Project is an innovative initiative launched by Hughes Women's Health Advocacy Institute to promote health literacy, equity, and justice among women of color. This project seeks to bridge the gap between health and wellness, sex, and the lived experience of women of color. So this is really like, we've had live discussions before, but this is the first one that we've done a full discussion guide for. So I'm really excited about it. And again, for those who maybe this is your first time joining us, you weren't here for the first discussion. The author of this text is Yasmin Cheyenne, and she's a speaker and self-healing advocate, born and raised in Brooklyn, New York. She's an Air Force veteran, now living in Washington, D.C., living and thriving with her family, owning businesses, um, and talking to women of color, Black women everywhere about centering oneself and about really putting and establishing some boundaries. So she does a lot of good things. In the discussion guide, I'll be talking about it a lot. There's a link to her Instagram and some other things for you to check her out. Some key concepts that come up throughout the book, also in the discussion guide, are boundaries, the metaphor of the sugar jar, which we went over the last time in really good detail, actually. Self-healing, radical self-acceptance, which she talks about self-healing and or self-healing being connected and part of radical self-acceptance. So you have to get to a place of radical self-acceptance in order to really begin healing from her point of view. And then a lot of this book talks about vulnerability. And so we're going to start again with chapter 6. And I'm going to kick us off. So I'm not going to read the entire summary. We'll just let you know a little bit about what each chapter is about. A quote that we find kind of significant in the book, even though there are tons. And then we'll ask each other questions. And then really we're asking our audience questions as well. So feel free to respond. Feel free to ask additional questions again. So chapter 6 is called Find Freedom Through Acceptance. And in this chapter, Yasmin urges us to understand that accepting the truth can drain our energy. And so instead, we must accept others for who they are and who they show us to be. So for example, we should not enter into relationships, friendships, whatever there are, attempting to change other people. Instead, it's either we are going to accept people for who they are, or, or move on, essentially, right? I think a lot of times, and we'll discuss this, but a lot of times we enter into spaces because of the potential of what somebody can be. But that often leads to disappointment and other things. And so she also talks about being mindful of overinvesting and things like that in other people's lives because it can be dangerous to our own health. So a quote to remember is, we hold on to hope that the change we're asking for in our relationships will take place so that we can all be healthier and happier together. What so many of us aren't ready to do until we absolutely have to is admit that the person we love might not be wanting to change. And so this chapter was like extremely timely. So it was an important read for me. I know it resonated extremely. So the questions that we have here are the first one is, how did the idea of changing those who don't want to change resonate with you? Or not changing those, rather, who don't want to change resonate with you? And then the second one, and I'll ask it again, why do you think we tend to overinvest in those who never or are not ready to invest in us? And before I give Lauren an opportunity to answer those questions, I want to point out that what's unique about, again, the discussion guide, and I'll stop saying it, but what's unique is that we have paired songs and also scents, so like essential oils, fragrances, things like that for each chapter. So what it smells like and what it feels like, what it sounds like. So we're really trying to have a really multifaceted experience with this discussion guide and discussion. So again, Lauren, How did the idea of changing those or attempting to change those who don't want to change resonate with you?
Well, for me personally, it resonated with me because it's kind of like accepting someone for who they are. You have to accept people for who they are and how they show up so that you don't have these unrealistic expectations for a person. Like you can't have these imaginary standards for a person and expect them to reach them, and they're not, they may not want that for themselves. So you have to accept people for who they are, and you either accept it for what it is, or if you can't handle it, you may have to reevaluate, who's in your life. And you may have a strong hope or desire to want the best for somebody, but they have to want it for themselves first.
Okay, you coming with the facts in the word today. I see. All right. So this is true. This is why this chapter was like, girl, sit down. You need to read this slowly. And I need you to recognize that. So the only thing you can change is yourself, baby. Like, and so stop dating, stop befriending, stop dating and befriending potential. Because you're going to want them to change.
Exactly.
So, and stop attempting to change other people and recognize that they are who they are. And so, yeah, I mean, there's nothing really. I already said how it resonated because it was like, wake up, sis. Mm-hmm. This chapter is for you. So, I really loved this chapter. The second question is, why do you think we tend to overinvest in those who never or who are not ready to invest in us?
I think people fall in love with potential, or like love the first few times you spend time with somebody and be like, oh, okay, well, they're this person, so let me pick this elaborate plan of who this person can be and what they can do for me. When if they don't want to pour into you, they don't. And that's just the reality of it. You have to accept that. Acceptance is a small, quiet room. You have to accept that and just move on with it. So it can be difficult because you have a lot of times, even myself, have an imaginary expectation of how something's going to be. And then you don't meet it. It's like a slap in the face because you weren't expecting it to not reach your expectations.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I agree. Again, you came with the word, like you gave us a metaphor and everything. Okay, so, but I mean, my thing is like, I think if we are putting forth our effort, right, in anything that we do, like we expect to get effort in return, and so, and my thing is like sometimes we see someone not living up to our expectations as them not putting forth effort, but that might be all of the effort they can give.
Right.
They might be putting forth effort, but that's all they get to give. And so, yeah, I think we overinvest because we want it to work. We want friendships to work. We want jobs to work. We want relationships to work. And it's regardless if it doesn't work, it's a grieving process regardless of the type of relationship it is. Yeah. And so we overinvest because we think if we do that, it's going to work. And I'm not going to say oftentimes, but many times it doesn't.
Yeah, and starting over can be scary. So it's like the fear of starting over. You're like, well, I've already come this far, so let me just keep going instead of cutting it off and starting over.
Yeah, most definitely. It's uncomfortable, and so many of us like tend to sit in spaces of comfort, even though it might be killing us on the inside, or it's impacting our mental health, because we are doing this for Mental Health Awareness Month. So it could be hindering our mental, physical, and spiritual well-being, but we want so bad for something to work out that we stick to the thing instead of moving forward. Okay, so we're going to go to chapter 7. Before we do that, are there any comments from Instagram?
I've been looking though.
Okay.
Okay.
Remember, y'all, you can comment. We'll get them. If you're on YouTube and or Facebook, we actually will get the comments a little delayed, but we will get them. And we can actually share them. So if you have a comment or you have another question, we can share them on the screen. And on Instagram, Lauren is watching out for those comments. So make sure you share. And it could just be like, yes, I feel you. And we don't have to share that, but we appreciate the feedback. So you ready to go to
chapter 7? Yeah. So chapter 7 is letting go as a self-care practice. In this chapter, Yasmin discusses self-worth and letting go. You cannot earn your worth or do enough right things to be considered worthy. You must know that you are already worthy of being treated with respect and love. As a human, we must forgive ourselves for our mistakes so we do not lose our self-worth. We must be clear in our identity, heal, and continue to grow as people. Forgiving ourselves for past mistakes gives us a better understanding of who we are. Not being compassionate to ourselves takes away from our sugar, i.e. energy. If we start viewing our mistakes as opportunities for growth, that will help us in our journey. A quote to remember is, acceptance doesn't mean encouraging more harmful behavior or welcoming more mistakes. It means embracing what took place with clarity and empathy while being honest with yourself about what hurt. This helps us move towards the steps of seeing who we are during our mistakes and loving ourselves anyways. So we have 2 discussion questions. In our lives, we have also been persuaded to hold on as opposed to let go. How does this message in this chapter resonate with you? And then the next one is, how have you practiced self-compassion lately?
Okay, I'll talk about the first one a little bit.
Okay.
But we really just talked about that. Like we are so fearful of starting over. And I'm gonna say, like, as I've grown older, it becomes even more fearful, particularly in relationships, because you don't want to get burned either, right? Like in friendships, you don't want to invest in this thing and then you end up hurt. And so we can build up a wall. And so it resonated with me like tremendously because, like, it's like as I grow older, I'm getting used to just being within my, like on my own and like nurturing self and things like that. And I think sometimes what can happen is you're so used to that, like, and it's important to invest in us because this is what this whole book is about. But then you could put a wall up because someone is not like up to your expectation. And sometimes that person is just supposed to be an acquaintance as well. And not like, sometimes the job is supposed to be somebody else's job, not yours. Sometimes the friend is supposed to be somebody else's friend, not yours. And sometimes the man or woman or person is supposed to be with someone else and not you. And so, it's just extremely important. So it's the same. And I can answer the second one since we had already really talked about that one. But self-compassion, I think over the last 2 weeks, I have, those who are close to me know that I have kind of like retreated within a little bit. And that was my way of, there were times that I was hard on myself, but I would say like this week alone, I have done things to try to be intentional about showing up for people and being compassionate with myself and not showing up for things that I don't want to go to or attend because I feel like it would like kind of like bleed me dry, if you will. Because some spaces are not often authentic spaces and healing spaces and compassionate spaces. And so in some settings, I've decided it's okay. Usually I would have beat myself up for not attending this or going to that. And I decided, like, you know what? You only have one life. And so, like, I'm doing what I would like to do in this life, not what other people want me to do. So, and that's compassion, but also just being, kind of tender with myself in terms of going through some life. To me is a ebb and flow. Ayana Van Zandt would call it like valleys, peaks and valleys. Uh, the value in the valley, if you will, and the valley is often the hardest part. But if you realize, like, and so for me, I've been going through this like up and down, like learning more about myself, learning more about the business of nonprofits, learning more about working with interns, doing, like just being more intentional. You just got to be compassionate and careful with yourself and kind to yourself and know that you're still and always learning. So that's how I've done that.
Yeah, I would say I've been showing myself more grace, letting my, just reminding myself like maybe this is your first time at something, even if it's your 100th time, you're still allowed to have grace and be patient with yourself, and it's okay to make a mistake. So yeah, I would say giving myself more grace. You're on mute.
Okay, sorry about that. So chapter 8 is the next one, and it is now this is one that resonated as well too. It was called Healing as the Parent and as a Child. And so there's a here. But in this one it says, in this chapter, Yasmin discussed her experience as a woman of color seeking care. She said she experienced a lot of trauma, racism, and difficulties in the healthcare field while she was pregnant. After all of the trauma she experienced, she was still afraid to voice how sad and drained she felt after labor and her experience in the NICU. After she gave birth, she realized how much she would need to give up and how much her body and life were changing. She discussed reparenting herself, and how healing childhood trauma can improve our lives. Yasmin shared a lot of tips on how to not drain yourself as a parent. She also shared ways to optimize one's energy while serving your family. And the quote to remember here is, trauma can change the way we interact with the world around us. Um, and so the questions that correspond are, so what role do you think trauma plays in the way that Black women specifically and other women of color show up in the world? And then what impact does trauma have on our lives as an emotional, physical, and spiritual, on a emotional, physical, and spiritual level?
So I think trauma shows up for women of color in the world around them. Wait, let me read this again. What role do you think trauma plays in the way Black women show up? Okay, so I think it causes them to show up maybe in a more, well, I guess it depends on how you respond to trauma. I would say the most common thing is that because women of color go through trauma, sometimes we feel the need, or it's important for us to assert ourselves and make ourselves clear, and that can come off kind of aggressive to some people. So then, like, you get like these labels thrown at you, or you get looked at as combative. Where it's like, well, if I let you walk all over me, you'll be happy, but I'll be miserable. And then it's like the trauma cycle continues. So I think that we have to assert ourselves in a certain way that not everybody's gonna love, but may be healthy for us. You're still on mute.
And what about the second one? That's what I was saying about
Oh,
the impact. So the second question asks, what impact does trauma have on our lives on emotional, physical, and spiritual level?
of course, I'm going to say negative. There's a negative impact, like emotionally. It also depends on how you handle trauma. I would say, okay, across the board, negatively, it could cause you to maybe not be able to maintain a full time job because you just it's hard to handle. You may have to like start working part time, which impacts your pay, which impacts where you live, which impacts how many times you can eat a day. So it all just a trickle down effect. So I would say emotionally, you may be tired. You may have health issues because of something traumatic you went through that didn't even impact like the inside of your body. Like if you're stressed, you can start to get acne, you can start to have stomach aches, all these other things. So like it goes from emotional to physical. You may be tired all the time. You may be irritable. Maybe not the most. You're not in your best self, so you're not probably pleasant to spend time with. So it impacts your other relationships. I would say physically, again, the mental trauma can affect your physical. It can again make you have acne, make you have breakouts, make you have pain in certain areas of your body where the trauma may where your body is storing trauma. Spiritual, you can feel like you're battling something, but because it's spiritual, you can't see it. So it could probably be hard to communicate a spiritual battle you're going through with someone because they can't see it, they can't feel it. It's like in your spirit, in your mind, within your body. So you could battle for something and not be able to find a solution for years. And that could subtract from how present you are in the time. You need to be present for like things like birthdays, your job, your children. It can subtract from that. And now you don't have a connection with others, which are important. So it's definitely a trickle down effect. The body keeps the score. That's what I wanted to say. The body keeps the score. If you haven't read that book.
Maybe we should do that one next. Okay. Anyway, because I have that one too. So, but I definitely agree. I want to go back to the part where you were talking about um, the the spiritual component, like not being able to uh, really describe or be able to communicate what you're feeling in a situation. And I think because it's spiritual, like when something hurts, we're able to point to that thing that hurts, right? We're able to say, my foot is hurting, right? My leg hurts, my head hurts. Okay. When I'm emotionally going through something, my heart hurts, right? Like, or I'm just feeling sad, like, or I'm fatigued, I'm tired because I'm stressed, right? You're able to share that spiritually. That's a different type of stress, it's a spiritual stress. And so, but I do feel like for me, because I think that's actually, I'll just be honest, one of the things I've been enduring is a kind of uh, attack on a spiritual level, like in terms of like my authentic self, who I am, um, my why, things like that, and what I am here to do, what I'm put on this earth to do, um, to support other people, if you will, the community and things like that. And so I think for me, it looks like feeling off. But when you say that to people, it's like, what's off? Like that's
Right.
all I can tell you. It's like things are off. Like things don't feel normal. Things are changing, but it's like a weird feeling. Like sometimes it's an emptiness. Like I just kind of feel empty. What do you mean? You like a whole person. What you mean you feel empty? You know what I'm saying? Like, but that's it's a different level. And I feel like they all happen simultaneously, but
Yeah.
because we don't have the words to describe a spiritual um illness or harm or injury, then we don't know how to share that information. And then in turn, other people don't know what we're talking about. There's a feminist writer, Adrienne Wing, and her she writes about critical race feminism, and one of the key things that she talks about is this idea of spirit injury. And so every time we navigate the world, we encounter, as women of color, as Black women, anytime we're dealing with racism, sexism, the intersections, classism, ableism, right? Like homophobia, transphobia, like different forms of discrimination and prejudice. Those things create a form of spirit injury. But when they keep happening continuously, they then end in spirit murder. And that is the point where you begin to get sick, right? You get sick, you get autoimmune diseases, you get, right, chronic illnesses that you can't fight off because it has like impacted you to the core. And so I think that's interesting because, I mean, that question is interesting because these other writers, women of color, have talked about the same. Weathering is another term that is used to talk about mental health, particularly in the lives of Black women specifically. So like weathering is this idea that the stress that comes from racial discrimination, racism, consistent like injuries again to your person, to your mental health, to your spirit, causes weathering. And so if you think about weathering, it's like if you're out in a storm or like a hurricane, you wouldn't be able to survive that hurricane, right? But Black women have been surviving these hurricanes. But what it's doing is that it is breaking us, our bodies down on a cellular level. It's killing us in a different, like faster. And so that's what that research shows, is that because Hughes is an organization dedicated to health equity. So the reality is that, weathering continues to happen, just like those spirit injuries. And what happens is that it kills our cells. There are ways to actually kill those cells, but it's through kind of mending and ridding of those stressors. And so I think this is deeply connected to this book. She just doesn't use those like scientific terms, if you will, but yeah. So it's extremely similar. I just want to make a comment. I know some folks are having an issue with downloading the text, and so we are, for the time being, going to drop it in the chat, the PDF of it. And if you are someone who was interested in purchasing the discussion guide, we will update the website after our discussion today. And if you are ever so kind to return to the website later tonight to purchase, if that is something that you are truly dedicated to doing, that link will be updated. I think there's an issue with finding your cart currently on the website. And so I have to figure out what's going on with all of that. So I am about to post the link to the PDF in a second. Lauren, do you mind doing the next one so that I can put the...
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, thank you.
So, chapter 9, the strong ones. During this time in her life, Yasmin was being stretched thin. She was a working solo mom going through a lot mentally and physically. At the time, she felt uncertain about sharing her emotions and thoughts, and thought that showing no emotion while keeping it all together showed how resilient she was. That's not true. This was untrue because it was a cry for help, and she was upset no one knew that she was struggling. It is difficult to balance vulnerability and being strong at the same time. Some of us are strong because we had no choice but to be strong. Being strong has its benefits and disadvantages, but we need to show up for ourselves and ask for help that we need. So, the quote to remember is: over time, strength began to feel like a burden. Because of my ability to push through, I was often left to deal with my stuff alone. So, our discussion questions: where do you think the model of the strong Black woman comes from? Number two, what impact does this model have on Black women and other women of color? And number three, what are ways that you can work to transform this model? So I think the strong Black woman model comes from. Now I'm not gonna sit up here and I don't have facts to really back it up, but in my belief, I believe it comes from when in slavery where they were breaking up Black families, and also in the time where single Black mothers were single Black mothers are like a common thing. Like, I don't know, none of my friends grew up in a 2-parent household like I did. So it's very prevalent. And I think that it comes from that narrative right there, removing the dad from the home and then the single mother having to build up a family structure all by herself. I think it comes from that. I think it comes from partially when women have to choose themselves and they decide to go to college, they decide to push through, they decide to get educated, do all these things for themselves. You're viewed as this strong Black woman. And I think it has negative effects. Because nobody else is saying strong Black Asian woman. I mean, strong Asian woman. Nobody's saying that, So it just has negative effects because it makes you seem like you're resilient and you can go through anything and you're supposed to go through anything. And there's no pat on the back. This is just the way it is for you. So that's where I think it comes from. Again, what impacts does this model have for women? I think it has a negative impact. It, like I said, it sets you at this level of you're strong, you can do this, you can just do it. You shouldn't feel anything, you shouldn't respond anyway, this shouldn't affect you, this is how it should be. When that's not true, you're a human being. The color of your skin does not change that. Okay, you get stressed out just like everyone else. You're not supposed to be building up a family structure alone. You're not supposed to be taking on all this stress. There's no badge of honor for being stressed out and overwhelmed and overworked, and there's no badge of honor for being strong. Actually, the squeaky wheel gets the oil. So you get more help when you ask for it. What are the ways that you can work to transform this model? I would say showing up as yourself. Sometimes some people are just more resilient, and that's okay too. So asking for help when you need it. Don't be afraid to ask for help. Ask for help when you need it. Be yourself. Take care of yourself, be in your soft energy and take care of yourself. So taking time away, if it's too much on your plate, just say that. Only taking on the things you need to take on, and then that's it. Putting you first, making sure you're getting the self-care you need. I say that kind of changed the model. Do you have anything to add, Dr. Nicole Carter?
And also, I think the site it might be updated. Yeah. Okay. So now, when you go to the site, everyone, it is called the free version. So until we fix the one that is under the paywall, feel free to download the free version of our discussion guide. And thank you for, I'm just gonna shout her out, Beyonce, for letting me know it wasn't working. Okay. Beyonce is a avid supporter of Hughes and volunteer of Hughes, so we truly appreciate her. Um, so the questions, it was something that you said that. So you said you I don't know where it comes from. I'm just gonna take a stab at it, but you were absolutely correct. That is exactly where it comes from. The idea that during slavery, and it continues today, but during slavery that Black women were so one, less than human, but also more than human simultaneously, right? So less than human in that we can be treated any way, treated poorly, but then so really treated like animals, because who did an animal pull then carries, buggies, things that were being built? Animals did that, right? And so many times, like people talk about Black women being the mule of the world, right? And that idea of this over, I don't know, like this extreme strength in terms of physical strength is one thing. And so this is another thing, going back to that health equity piece. When Black women say that they're in pain, when Black women say that there is something wrong, oftentimes in giving birth and things like that, or just when you show up to the doctor, period, we are not believed, because the assumption is that we're not in pain. The assumption is that our pain tolerance is like on this extreme level. And books have actually been written on like erroneous texts, right? Erroneous passages about differences in strength, pain tolerance, and race have been written. So that's one piece. But when it comes to Black women and emotions and mental health, we ain't emotional beings to most people. And so we've taken on that idea. Like, I don't know how, I can't even count on both hands how many times I've been told when I've shared a mental health concern that I shouldn't be sharing my mental health concerns publicly. I'm supposed to be strong. Suck it up, right? It's weak to show that you are struggling, you're sad, you're stressed, deal with it. I've even been told, like, deal with it because, I mean, your ancestors dealt with it. And my thing is, like, did they really? How you know? You was there?
Additionally, if it was dealt with, why is it being passed down?
Right. It wasn't. That's why it has impacted us on a cellular level. That's what epigenetics is all about. The way that stress and trauma has transformed our genes and DNA. So that we didn't deal with it. It wasn't dealt with then. Yeah, they sucked it up because they had to.
And also, more things were, I'm not saying your mental health is not important, because it definitely is, but it was something else more important. How I'm going to get to, I might be on the underground world, how I'm going to get to the next spot with my babies. You know what I'm saying? How am I going to live? How am I going to, just like probably surviving was like the only thought. Like, a lot of the women probably didn't even have menstrual cycles because they were so stressed out with just like trying to do the right thing, thinking of hope. So many other struggles like took place first.
But the reality is, this is why I say how you know, not you. I'm talking about people who say that, because the reality is that Black women then did practice mental health, right? And like wellness, if you will, in certain ways, singing, dance, cooking, right? These are ways like taking medicine, using the earth as medicine, agriculture, planting, right? Arts, quilting. Those all have mental health components within them. They are healing. They have healing components within them. This is why when Black folks came from Africa and many other groups like came from, you know, like, well, and Native folks was already here, right? They were practicing these healing practices. And that's why they were either stolen, colonized, or things were done to make us forget that we already had everything we needed to heal ourselves. And so there were things that happened, but that trauma, because it wasn't healing, wasn't welcome, right? Work was welcome. Um, Punishment was welcome. And so what happens with that is that it just continues on, right? Like it continues, it's like the intergenerational trauma. So I truly believe that. And you also, I just want to point out, so you brought up, you know, like Asian women aren't expected to be the strong Asian woman, but they do have a stereotype.
Oh yeah, for
Which
sure.
is like this meek, right? Like this meek, weak, kind of like quiet,
Seen but not
that
heard.
that myth, right?
Yeah.
The model minority myth. And I know, especially right now, because it's AAIP Heritage Month, and so it's important to point out there are always so many intersections. And then what happens when they demonstrate that they aren't this meek character, quiet, right person, someone who has a voice and an opinion, then they're seen as problematic. And then Black women, when we share, when we share our voices, when we speak up, we're seen as problematic. And then when we try to live a soft life,
It's still a
embrace,
problem.
yes, embrace a soft life, it's like, what you doing? Why we ain't going to the bar? Like, I'm just trying to clean. Can I just live in my be in my house in peace? Do some tea. You can come over for some tea. You want some tea?
We need to bring back tea hours. Biscuits.
Yes.
And tea.
Well, okay.
A nice
Coffee.
tea hour. Coffee, tea hour. We need to bring these back.
This is why we're doing book discussions. This is part of a soft life. Okay, we're trying to embrace it. Like having opportunities for discussion and engagement, and trying to unearth trauma so that we can heal from that trauma. So, but and actually it's funny because I told y'all that our discussion guides have songs to go along with every chapter. So this song that goes along with this chapter is called Soft Life. That's the name of it. And I'm probably gonna say it wrong. Lang Lang is an essential oil, which is like a soft kind of calming essential oil. So, but I just read an article about SZA going off on actually Asian and no, Latina and white women, but mostly white women, for co-opting the hashtag soft life, like kind of lifestyle. And for those who don't know about that, just actually look it up on you know, like on Instagram, do the hashtag, or on TikTok, hashtag soft life. But really amongst Black women, it's just an attempt to like reclaim like this, our so-called feminine energy. I feel like we all have feminine energy, but sometimes we're expected to show up so much as like this aggressor, and we're always ready to fight or flight, but never like retreat. Like, hey, I'm here. I'm not fighting or flighting or fleeing.
I'm
So, right.
Yeah.
So, but and it's really hard when those around you don't subscribe to this idea of like just kind of being. I want to be like, I just want to chill. I want to light some candles. I want to embrace who I am. I want to focus on my mental health, my physical health, my spiritual well-being. I want to get my money up at the same time. Those things are not incongruent, by the way. And I think that we've been taught that, like, if you're a businesswoman, if you're going to school, if you're doing all these things, you have to be like this particular type of way. And so I think the soft life thing is like kind of rebranding what it means for Black women in particular, rebranding what it means to be a Black woman. We don't have to respond to or react rather to people's BS. So, but yeah. So I had a lot to say about you. I was listening. I was just trying to upload the PDF. Okay, so um, but um, and then you did talk about you addressed the impact, but the impact is like, yeah, we have like, I truly believe, as someone with multiple autoimmune diseases, three to be exact, two that I talk about mostly, but because they're major autoimmune diseases, but autoimmune diseases, chronic illness like diabetes, for example, heart disease, or like high blood pressure, things like that. I truly believe that those are those kind of run in families, if you will, but they don't have to. But they do because of unhealed trauma that has like kind of like been pervasive since enslavement, and never been healed. And so I think this showing up as this strong person all the time means that you can't, it like caring for yourself is counter to that idea of the strong woman. And I'm honestly trying to rebrand what a strong woman looks like. To me, a strong woman is someone who embraces the soft life. A strong woman is someone who's okay with her solitude, reading, journaling, chilling. Shoot, just watching TV if that's what you want to do. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, just being who you want to be. So, I don't know if did you address the last question, the third question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ways to work to transform this model. So I think I just also shared. Yeah. It's just like choosing to show up in spaces, because it's also recognizing some spaces are not safe for us to be who we want to be. And so in the spaces that are safe, making sure that you show up as your full self, regardless of what that looks like. So truly doing some reflection to make sure that you are who you say you are. And then the other thing is, in those spaces that are not safe, I think it's important for women of color, period, to work to create opportunities, like pulling each other up, right? So that we can transform those spaces. And then women of color, period. And then our allies, folks who are our allies, right? Creating space for us to be our authentic selves, and transforming organizations and movements and businesses and different things like that, so that we have the ability to be our full selves, authentic selves, whatever that looks like. And yeah, so and sometimes that looks like creating your own movement, your own organization, because you know that the organizations that were created by other folks were not created for you. And there's no way in hell that you can be your true self. And so you create your own shit. All right, sorry for cursing. Not sorry. Anyway. So thank you for taking over for a second there. So chapter 10, and we're almost done, y'all. Like, how many? We got like 5 minutes.
Yeah, one more chapter. Yeah.
So chapter 10 is, it's a question. Am I healing? Are you healing more?
Okay. I am.
Constantly. I want to get into this because I think there's some misconceptions about healing. And this is why I like this chapter, because it does some great things to like provide some clarification. But so in this chapter, Yasmin encourages us to assess where we are in our healing journey. She provides questions and prompts to assess our healing. She stresses the importance of checking in with ourselves um, and knowing that healing is not a race. She also encourages us to recognize that healing will not keep us from experiencing bad things or feeling bad, but it can help us understand ourselves and our choices. She encourages us to recognize that our healing journey can change at any time to meet our needs. Um, so the quote here is healing has no graduation. I'm going to say it again. My favorite one. Thank you for, is this a quote? You picked this quote, didn't you?
Yep.
Yes. Thank you. Healing has no graduation. All right. So we may be done with certain cycles, certain unhealthy people, or certain harmful behavior. And that's amazing and should definitely be celebrated. But again, healing has no graduation. So that is like that's the important part for me. And so the question, the first question is: many of us have been taught that healing is a final place or a destination that we have to attain to. Based on this chapter, how has your view changed or stayed the same about healing? That's one. And then the second one is: what messages do you think exist around us that prevent us from saying no, using our voice, giving to ourselves, checking within, and overgiving?
I would say I used to think healing was a destination, but now I know it's like an ongoing cycle. And it's not like from the perspective of you're always going to go through something, so you're always going to need to heal. It's not like that. It's just, I look at it now as like elevating yourself, like literally making yourself better. You want to be a better person than you were last year. That type of deal. That's how I look at healing, like making your body, your home, your everything feel like a safe space. So that's how I look at it now. I don't look at it as like, oh, I got to go through something traumatic, then I'll heal. And then next time I go through something traumatic, I'll heal again. Like, not like that. I think that some things that prevent us from saying no or checking in with ourselves, I think that when someone asks something from you, it's so quick and in the moment, it's like you don't even have a moment to check in with yourself. So I think that this fast-paced life of whenever you have a lot of commitments, you might be a part of different orgs, your job, it might be a lot of different things going on in school. So it's like the minute somebody asks you for something, you don't even have like 10 seconds to check in with yourself because everything is so fast-paced. Feeling obligated, it's like I'm supposed to be here, I'm getting paid to be here, or like this is something I volunteered for, so I should say yes. It's like I signed up for it, so I should say yes. When really you could just say yes to most things and say no to the things you can't say no to, and being fearful of what those repercussions look like being fearful of if you say no, what might happen. So I think those are important things that people weigh.
Yeah. So to respond to that question, I agree. I used to think that healing was a destination, like a final place that we get to, and then it's like, oh, we're here, right? And then but I also, have you ever learned, I'm sure you did, because your background is social work, like mental health, things like that. And also you did like organizational leadership where you have to learn about like the psychology of kind of working with people and different things like that. Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Now, I'm going to bring this up, but also say that there have been updates to it to be more inclusive. So I will say that. But on a basic level, self-actualization is like this top thing that is often said that we never get to. That's how it was put. Like, that's how I was taught. Like, many people don't ever get there. Like, we get to like the third part of the, like the pyramid, and never get to the self-actualization piece. And then, but in Native cultures, right, like Native and or indigenous, there's a different thinking about it. Like it's different altogether. But in many cultures, right? Um, like this idea of self-actualization is continuous. And so that goes back to this idea of healing. Healing to me is like self-actualization, like recognizing one, acknowledging that something is happening, that there is a need to heal, that there are issues going on, what have you. And and then with that, like, like we might get to a good place where we have tools to work through the trauma that we were, like we went through when we were younger, or even last week or something, right? Like, or we might now have kind of gone through healing practices to work through those things that have happened to us in the past. And so then when things happen now, it doesn't impact us the same, but it still impacts us. What happens is that we're still triggered. And so many times, like we might have done the work and we show up differently and we respond instead of reacting, but we still need to work through that. And that's to me like healing is, right, this thing that is, it's a cycle, like, um and I just feel like some things, for example, when I was 7 my mom died, right? That's something you never heal from. You don't heal from that. You're a little girl, you look up to this woman, right? Y'all look just alike, and now she's not here. That you don't heal from that. That's not something you heal from. But what happens is you learn to live life, right? You're healing through it as opposed to healing from it. And I think that's a different way of looking at things. Like the only way uh, to heal is through, is another quote that many people say. Is like going through the things instead of like avoiding. And I think many of us, going to the next question, I'm just going to talk about preventing us from like really checking within, because I think part of checking within is acknowledging that there's something to heal from or heal through. I'm gonna start saying heal through, not heal from. Um, but there's some, like we avoid it because it's hard. You know, who wants to be saying, like, who wants to like continue to grieve a situation? Like, who want? A lot of us, and I think she talked about it. We talked about it the last time, like this toxic positivity, things like that, like this overwhelming sense of like, I gotta be fine. Everything is okay. I'm okay. Like, deal with it. We're good over here. You're not. Like, baby, sit down and go to therapy. Um, so write in your journal, type in your journal if you have to. I don't know, but do some meditation, pray. Um, but not everything is happy, happy, joy, joy, and it's okay. So, but yeah. So, but I do those messages. I've been told continuously that healing is a final destination. Like it's a place you attain to, you get to. This is a journey, and if you're not healed, there's something wrong with you. But the reality is that we're all always healing. So from something. So, well, I said I wasn't gonna say from again. We're all always healing through something.
Yeah. So chapter 11, our last chapter, practice filling your jar. In this final chapter, Yasmin reminds us that we get to decide what our life looks like, what is comfortable, what works, and what does not. She provides various questions and activities to assist us in assessing our jar, understanding when we are healing, and activities that can fill our jar with peace. A quote to remember. So just do what feels good now, knowing you can make changes whenever you choose to. We have 2 discussion questions left. 1, did you grow up believing that you had to make decisions about your life that were final or that could not change? And how does the book contribute How has the book contributed to your understanding of transformation and boundaries?
Okay. You want me to start or you going?
Yeah, you can go start. You can go start.
Okay. So, yes, I grew up. So, like, even going, I just keep going back to, when you're younger and they're like, what do you want to be when you grow up? You know what I'm saying? And I kind of like, I think I foretold my future and having like 50 degrees, okay? Because when I was younger, I used to be like, I want to be a singer. I want to be a ballet. I want to be a ballerina. I want to be a cardiologist. Now, why am I 7 talking about I want to be a cardiologist? Who knows? I want to be a cardiologist and I want to be a lawyer. Ma'am, what? So it's like, I already knew I was clueless about, like I always, and I think most of us have so many different, things that we're interested in, and avenues that we could be working towards. And then like in terms of life, like we have a personal life, like at home life, family life, we have friends, we have for us sororities, right? Like sororities, we have other organizations, we have jobs, we got internships, we got like all of these different things. Nobody told us about all of those things. Nobody did. It was just like, what do you want to be when you grow up? I think so, and we still do that. We still do that to, like to children, like, and it is also seen as an issue when you don't make a decision, like when you can't make a decision. And I know you and I had this conversation, like, but I am one, like I am a proponent of like being real with yourself and doing what feeds you. Doing what feeds you, because who the hell wants to be miserable all of their lives? Because they started on a path and they realized that was not what they wanted to do. But hey, the world tells me I'm supposed to fulfill this somebody else's destiny, but it's somebody else's destiny. It's not yours. So like of course I was taught that. But I didn't believe that, obviously, because I had like 50 million ideas of what I wanted to do, who I was supposed to be. And yeah, I don't believe that who knows? I don't even know what I'm gonna be doing 3 years from now. So,
Man.
And how has the book contributed to my understanding of transformation and boundaries? I mean, like I said, many of these chapters resonated with me. They speak to things I'm going through in my life right now, every single day. I needed that chapter 6. I'm gonna tell you, I needed that chapter 6. It gave me words, phrases, sentences, responses that I could use to share with folks. Like, you know what? It is me. It's not you. You are who you are. And I am who I am. And we just not meant to be. As friends, as, like in a relationship, jobs, you know what I'm saying? Like certain opportunities are not my opportunity. And so this book has changed my perspective in that way. And then boundaries, I feel like I've been better at practicing boundaries. You and I talked about that the last time. It's something that I did not practice well before. But I am quick to be like, no, I can't go. Actually, I can go, but I don't want to go. Like, so, or I'm quick to be like, that's not what I want to do. And I think the thing that resonated with me too, right at the beginning of the book, she talked about intentions. Like basically your why behind what you do. And I'm going to tell you now, every day that I sit down to do work, like the actual work of Hughes, and then I also am working on another special project. So that aspect, I set an intention so that I'm like, because it's like a guide, right? Like it's helping me to remember, like, if I'm going out and I'm doing this, is it contributing to my why, or is it wasting my time?
Right.
So the book has changed me. Yes, definitely.
Yeah, I would say for the first question that I feel like as a kid I was told like, or just growing up, you should have like a final destination, like a final idea. That's why they ask, what do you want to be when you grow up? In college, it's kind of like you're pressured to pick a degree. And it's just like so hard because you're fresh out of high school. You're making all your own choices normally, well, usually for the first time by yourself. So it is a lot of pressure to just know what you want and do it. And then if it's not something super lucrative that people know about, it's kind of frowned upon. So but then I realized that it can be kind of, it could flow. It can help you figure out what your true purpose is by just kind of rolling with things. So I do appreciate that. And then how's the book contribute to you? So I understand boundaries now, like in a totally different perspective. The benefits of boundaries, how to set them, what they should look like, that they can change, that there's nothing wrong with you got to the point where you were drained and now it's time to do something about it, and how much they protect you. So I think the book was fantastic and very beneficial.
Yeah, I really like it. And it's so thank you. Because remember, I was like, I wish you would have picked a different one. Because I let you pick from a group of books as part of your internship last semester. And so this is like, and I will also say congratulations, Lauren, because you completed this. It's like a complete project, right? Like you, from start to finish, this was your brainchild. Like this discussion, the discussion guide. And I really, yeah. So like, and it changed me, the book, like certain chapters of it. So I'm truly appreciative. So everybody thank Lauren for picking the book. Um, so thank you all for joining us today. For those who are still with us listening, you might be doing something else, but it's still playing. I wanted to share some things. The first thing is we still have another month in Mental Health Awareness Month. And we will be continuing with certain components of the sugar jar and lessons on our social media page for the last week of Mental Health Awareness Month. So make sure that you are following us on at least Facebook and Instagram, and make sure that you sign up to get alerts from our website as well for our newsletter, because by doing that, you will get kind of the continuation of the mental health awareness / sugar jar discussion with some prompts on social media, prompts and things like that are additional. Also, if you have questions, feel free to reach out to us on any of our pages about the book, about the discussion. If you want to continue the conversation with one of us, reach out using our social media platforms. That information will be in our bio. And so you will have that. If you have suggestions for a book in the future, let us know. Remember, we are an organization that serves women of color of every hue, meaning that we serve Black, Latina, and or Hispanic, Asian American, Pacific Islander, Middle Eastern, Native, and Indigenous women. And so we welcome books that are inclusive, and those that are related, specifically those related to health and or wellness. We like a wellness spin. We love things about mental health. And so going back to the mental health piece, we want to just let you know about our next read in July, and you'll be hearing more about that from our social media, all platforms where we communicate with our audience and volunteers and people who love us. So the book is by Dr. Marielle Bouquet. And that book is Break the Cycle, a guide to healing intergenerational trauma, which is in alignment with all the things we were talking about. It will be in July. So get your book now. Um, Start reading. There will be a corresponding discussion guide to go along with it. It is found on all platforms that you can purchase books, but I will suggest getting it from bookshop.org. And on Bookshop, we actually, Hughes has a mini bookshop where when you purchase from Bookshop, you actually support small bookstores, locally owned. So that would be Michigan, Ohio, like the regionally owned bookstores. So, any last words, Lauren?
I just want to thank everyone for joining, coming to part 1 and part 2. We are super grateful for your support.
All right. And yes, thank you all. Again, this was live, so it will be on our social media sites, on the website, on YouTube. So feel free to watch it later if you want to take some time and go through the book yourself and revisit the conversation. Have a good week, everyone, and weekend.
Bye.